Yun walked with her head down through the shining halls of Nexus Academy. The soft hum of the school's gravity fields mixed with the whispers that followed her everywhere. She clutched her data pad tighter against her chest. "Look, there goes the human," a voice said, not trying to be quiet. "So small and fragile," another voice added. "I heard they only live 100 years. Yun kept walking. She was used to this by now. Being the only human at the most elite school in the galaxy was not easy. 3 months had passed since she arrived on Nexus, and the novelty of being called names had worn off. Now it was just tiring. The academy halls were built for beings much taller than humans. The ceilings stretched up 30 feet, and the doors were wide enough for 4 people to walk through side by side. Everything was made of smooth white stone that glowed with a soft blue light. It was beautiful, but it made Yun feel even smaller. She turned into her Galactic history classroom and found her seat in the back corner. The desks adjusted to fit each student, but hers always felt too big. Yun was about to pull up her notes when a shadow fell across her desk. "Studying hard, Earthchild?" Tahoe asked. He stood 7 feet tall with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer. His people, the Celestials, were known for living over 1,000 years and building technology so advanced it seemed like magic. Trying to catch up. Yun looked up at him. "I'm just reviewing my notes, like everyone else." Tahoe smiled, but not kindly. "Admirable. Though I wonder why your species even bothers. By the time humans master space travel, my people will have learned to bend reality." He leaned closer. "Your whole civilization will be just a footnote in history by then." "Leave her alone, Tayo," said a voice from across the room. Mina, a girl with scales instead of skin, frowned at him. She was one of the few students who had been nice to Yun. Tahoe straightened up and shrugged. "I'm just stating facts." He walked to his seat as the teacher entered. Professor Kang was a 4-armed being with eyes that blinked sideways. "Today we'll discuss the Voidborn War," he announced, "a conflict that shaped our modern galactic community 300 years ago." Yun tried to focus, but she felt eyes on her from all sides. Being human at Nexus meant being seen as primitive. Earth had only joined the Galactic Union 50 years ago. Most species here had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The lesson moved to the interactive display, showing star maps and battle formations. Professor Kang talked about the brutal Voidborn Empire and how they had nearly conquered the galaxy. "Who can tell me which forces finally stopped the Voidborn advance?" Professor Kang asked. The room was quiet. Yun knew the answer from her reading, but kept her head down. Finally, Tahoe raised his hand. "The combined fleet led by Admiral Sun," he said confidently. "Correct." Professor Kang nodded. "Though interestingly, Admiral Sun was a human," Yun said quietly, surprising herself. The class turned to look at her. Professor Kang raised his eyebrows. "Yes, that's right, Yun. Admiral Jisu's son was human, one of the first humans to command a galactic fleet." Tahoe's face darkened. "A lucky accident of history," he muttered. After class, Yun walked alone to the dining hall. She got her food, a bland protein mix designed for human nutrition, and sat at an empty table. "Can I join you?" Mina asked, holding her tray. Yun nodded, grateful for the company. "Don't mind Tayo," Mina said. "His family lost status when humans joined the Union." "Why would that matter?" Yun asked. Mina looked at her strangely. "You really don't know. The humans under Admiral Sun didn't just defeat the Voidborn. They changed the power balance of the entire galaxy." She smiled. "For a primitive species, you made quite an entrance." Yun stared down at her food, thinking about Admiral Sun. That night, she dreamed of stars and battles and a woman giving orders on a ship's bridge. The woman turned, and for a moment, Yun thought she was looking in a mirror. Yun sat up in bed, her heart racing. The dream had been so real. She could still feel the weight of the uniform, the press of the metal against her chest, the responsibility of thousands of lives. She wiped sweat from her forehead and checked the time. 3:42 in the morning by Earth standards. This was the 5th night in a row. The dreams kept coming, each one clearer than the last. In this dream, she had stood on the bridge of a massive ship. Stars stretched out before her on a huge screen. People. No, not just people. Beings from all over the galaxy waited for her orders. They called her Admiral Sun and looked at her with respect, even fear. Hei-Yun got up and went to the small sink in her dorm room. She splashed cold water on her face and looked in the mirror. Just a normal human girl with dark eyes and straight black hair cut short at her shoulders. Not a legendary admiral commanding a fleet. You're losing it, she told her reflection. Later that morning, Hei-Yun struggled to stay awake in tactical systems class. The teacher, Professor Doyen, was explaining how different species had developed different approaches to space combat. The Orcs of the Meridian Cluster use gravity wells as weapons, he said, his silver-scaled skin catching the light as he moved. While the celestial fleets, he nodded toward Tayo, prefer to use time distortion fields. Hei-Yun's eyes started to close. Suddenly, words came out of her mouth without her meaning to speak. The problem with time distortion is the energy drain on the forward shields. The room went silent. Professor Doyen stared at her, his large eyes blinking slowly. An interesting observation, Hei-Yun, he said carefully. That is indeed a weakness of that system, one that was famously exploited during the Battle of Orion's Belt. Taho turned in his seat, his blue face dark with anger. How would you know that? That's classified celestial military information. Hei-Yun felt her face grow hot. I must have read it somewhere. Impossible, Taho snapped, unless your primitive species has been spying on us. That's enough, Professor Doyen said. Let's continue with the lesson. After class, Hei-Yun rushed out, avoiding everyone's eyes. She didn't understand how she knew that fact. It had just popped into her head, like remembering something she'd always known. She was so lost in thought that she bumped into Professor Doyen in the hallway. Careful, Hei-Yun, he said, steadying her with one of his 4 hands. Up close, she could see that his silver scales had dark spots, signs of age. I'm sorry about what I said in class, Hei-Yun said quickly. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Professor Doyen looked at her for a long moment. How are you sleeping lately? The question surprised her. Not well. I've been having strange dreams. What kind of dreams? His voice was too casual. Just strange ones. About being someone else. She didn't want to say more. He nodded slowly. Dreams can be important, Hei-Yun. They can tell us things we need to know. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver disc. If the dreams become too troubling, place this under your pillow. It might help. Before Hei-Yun could ask what it was, he walked away, his long robes swishing against the floor. That night in the dining hall, Hei-Yun sat alone again until Minna joined her. Everyone's talking about what you said in tactical systems, Minna said, her scaled fingers tapping the table. Taho is telling people you're a spy. Hei-Yun sighed. Great, just what I needed. How did you know that about the shields? Minna asked. It's not in any of our textbooks. I don't know, Hei-Yun admitted. It just came to me. Minna leaned forward. There's a rumor going around about Admiral Sun. Hei-Yun's heart skipped. What about her? They say before she died, she did something to preserve her memories, some kind of ancient human technology. Minna's voice dropped to a whisper. What if those memories didn't just disappear? What if they found a new home? Hei-Yun almost dropped her fork. That's crazy. Is it? Minna asked. You've been different lately, saying things you shouldn't know, even the way you walk sometimes. That night, Hei-Yun placed Professor Doyen's silver disc under her pillow. As she drifted off to sleep, she wondered if she really wanted the dreams to stop. In her dream that night, she stood on a burning ship, giving orders to evacuate. A voice called her Jisoo as explosions rocked the bridge. And for the first time, when she looked down at her hands in the dream, they looked exactly like her own. Professor Doyen moved silently through the empty library. It was late. Most students and staff were asleep. His silver scales reflected the dim blue emergency lights as he approached a section marked Restricted Archives. He placed his hand on the scanner and spoke clearly. Professor Doyen, Level 7 clearance. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a small room with a single desk and a glowing terminal. Doyen sat down and began typing rapidly with all four hands. Access historical military records. Voidborn War, Admiral Jisoo's son, he said to the computer. Warning. These files are sealed by Galactic Security Order 47B. The computer responded. Please state reason for access. Doyen hesitated. Research on consciousness transfer technology. Priority level. Urgent. After a moment, the screen filled with images, reports, and videos. Doyen scrolled through them quickly, looking for something specific. He stopped at a file labeled Project Lighthouse. There you are, he whispered. The file contained reports about Admiral Sun's final days. As the Voidborn forces were defeated, she had volunteered for an experimental procedure to preserve her tactical knowledge and experience. Her consciousness was copied into a special device, meant to be transferred to a new host if the Voidborn ever returned. The procedure was successful, Doyen read aloud, but the transfer device was lost during the final battle when Admiral Sun's flagship was destroyed. He scrolled down further, or so everyone thought. A small note at the bottom of the file caught his attention. Device signal detected, Earth sector, 23 years ago. Doyen sat back, his mind racing. 23 years ago, Hei-yun was 17. That would mean. Suddenly, a small alert appeared in the corner of the screen. Someone else was accessing the same files from another terminal. Doyen quickly checked the user ID. Instructor Juwoo, Military History Department. Doyen's eyes narrowed. Juwoo was from a species that had once worked closely with the Voidborn. They claimed to have been forced to help the Empire, but many still doubted their loyalty. He closed the files and erased his access logs. As he left the restricted section, Doyen made a decision. He needed to protect Hei-yun while he figured out what was happening. The next morning, Hei-yun woke up feeling strange. The silver disc Professor Doyen had given her was warm to the touch. Her dreams had been different last night, clearer, more organized. Less like dreams and more like memories being sorted. She got dressed quickly and headed to her first class. Military history with Instructor Juwoo. The tall, thin teacher had gray skin with faint purple markings. His species, the Varric, were known for their perfect memory and skill with technology. Today we will discuss the fall of the Voidborn Empire. Instructor Juwoo announced. Specifically, the battle tactics that led to their defeat. He displayed a star map showing fleet positions. The Voidborn forces had superior numbers and weapons. By all logic, they should have won. Can anyone tell me why they lost? The class was silent. Even Taho seemed unsure. Hei-yun found herself raising her hand without thinking. Yes, Hei-yun. Instructor Juwoo's eyes fixed on her with unusual intensity. They lost because Admiral Sun split their fleet, she said, the words coming easily. She used the Orion maneuver to force their ships to divide into 3 groups, then attacked each group separately. Juwoo stared at her. That is correct. But the Orion maneuver is not in your textbook. It's not even in most military references. Hei-yun felt her face grow hot as everyone turned to look at her. I must have read about it somewhere else, she said weakly. Interesting, Juwoo said. Perhaps you could stay after class to discuss your outside reading. After class, Hei-yun was gathering her things when Instructor Juwoo approached her desk. You have an unusual knowledge of military history for someone so young, he said. His voice was friendly, but his eyes were cold. I just study a lot, Hei-yun said, wanting to leave. Indeed, Ju held up a small device. Would you mind if I scan you? It's a simple brain activity test. All students take it. Before Heyun could answer, Professor Doyen appeared at the classroom door. Heyun, there you are, he said. I need your help with organizing the lab for tomorrow's class. Juwoo lowered the device. Another time, perhaps, he said to Heyun. As they walked away, Doyen leaned close to Heyun. Stay away from Instructor Juwoo, he whispered. And keep that disc with you at all times. Your dreams are not just dreams, Heyun. And some people would do anything to get what's in your head. Heyun couldn't sleep. Professor Doyen's warning about Instructor Juwoo kept repeating in her mind. She turned the silver disc over in her hands, wondering what it really did. Was it recording her dreams, changing them? A soft knock on her door made her jump. It was past midnight. Who is it? She called, her voice shaking a little. It's Mina. Please let me in. Heyun opened the door. Mina slipped inside quickly, looking nervous. What's wrong? Heyun asked. People are looking for you, Mina whispered. I overheard Instructor Juwoo talking to someone on a communication device. He said the vessel has been located and the memories are becoming active. She grabbed Heyun's arm. I think he was talking about you. Heyun felt cold. That's crazy. Why would anyone care about me? Mina's scales seemed to darken with worry. Because you're not just you anymore. Those dreams, they're real memories, aren't they? Admiral Sun's memories. Heyun wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. The dreams felt too real, too detailed. But why would that matter now? The war ended 300 years ago. Not everyone wanted it to end. Mina said, my grandmother told me stories. The Voidborn didn't just vanish. They went into hiding, waiting for a chance to return. Heyun clutched the silver disc tighter. What should I do? For now, act normal, Mina said. I'll keep listening for information. Just be careful around Juwoo. The next day in Tactical Systems class, Heyun tried to keep her head down, but Professor Doyen called on her repeatedly, asking complex questions about fleet movements and battle strategies. Each time, Heyun answered perfectly without thinking. She noticed Taeho watching her with a strange expression. Not the usual contempt, but something more like concern. After class, Instructor Juwoo was waiting in the hallway. Heyun, a word please, he said, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. Professor Doyen stepped between them. I'm afraid Heyun has a special assignment with me now, Instructor. This won't take long, Juwoo insisted. Neither will my assignment, Doyen said firmly. Juwoo's smile disappeared. He looked at Heyun with cold eyes. Another time, then. That night, Heyun had the most vivid dream yet. She was on a ship's bridge, but it was burning. Alarms blared as crew members ran to escape pods. Admiral, you must evacuate, someone shouted. In the dream, she shook her head. Not until everyone else is off. Get the device to safety. The knowledge must survive. A massive explosion rocked the ship. Heyun sat up in bed, gasping. The room was dark and quiet. Too quiet. The usual soft hum of the Academy's air system was missing. Suddenly, her door slid open. 3 figures stood there, tall beings with gray skin and glowing purple markings. They wore dark uniforms that seemed to blend with the shadows. Remain still, one said, raising the device toward her. This won't hurt. Heyun rolled off the bed just as a beam of light hit where she had been. She scrambled to her feet and back toward the window. You cannot escape, another said. Your body contains what is ours. I don't have anything of yours, Heyun said, her heart pounding. Not you, the first one said. The Admiral within you. Her knowledge of our weaknesses, her strategies. They moved closer. Heyun felt something hard and cold press against her back. The window, she was trapped. Time to come with us, Admiral Sun, the leader said, reaching for her. Suddenly, The door burst open again. A tall figure charged in, knocking two of the intruders aside. In the dim light, Hei-yun saw blue skin shimmer. Tahoe. He moved with surprising speed, striking the intruders with precise blows. "Run," he shouted to Hei-yun. She didn't hesitate. She darted past the fighting figures and into the hallway. Behind her, she heard crashes and shouts. Then Tahoe was beside her, grabbing her arm. "This way," he said, pulling her down a side corridor. "They shut down security systems in this section." "Why are you helping me?" Hei-yun gasped as they ran. Tahoe's face was grim. "Because I know who you are now, Admiral. And if they get what's in your head, the whole galaxy is in danger." Tahoe pulled Hei-yun into a small room filled with cleaning supplies. He closed the door quietly and put his finger to his lips. They could hear footsteps running past. "Why are you helping me?" Hei-yun whispered once the sounds faded. "You hate humans." Tahoe's blue face looked strange in the dim light. "I don't hate humans. It's complicated." "Explain it," she demanded. Something new was in her voice, a tone of command that surprised them both. Tahoe sighed. "I'm not just a student. I work for the Galactic Preservation Society. We protect important knowledge and keep balance in the galaxy." "You're a spy?" Hei-yun asked in disbelief. "I prefer agent," Tahoe said. "I was sent here to watch for signs of voidborn activity. Then you started showing knowledge only Admiral Sun could have." He looked at her carefully. "Your brain patterns match hers." I checked. "When did you check my brain patterns?" Hei-yun asked, angry now. "When you first arrived. It's standard for all new students." Tahoe looked uncomfortable. "I didn't know who you really were then." "I'm not Admiral Sun," Hei-yun insisted. "I'm just me." "But you have her memories," Tahoe said. "That's what they want. The Voidborn remnants need her knowledge of their weaknesses." A soft knock on the door made them both freeze. Then they heard Professor Doyen's voice. "It's me." Tahoe opened the door just enough for the professor to slip inside. Doyen looked at them, both with his large, silver eyes. "The intruders have left, but they'll be back," he said. "Hei-yun, I owe you an explanation." Hei-yun crossed her arms. "Yes, you do. That disk I gave you helps organize Admiral Sun's memories in your mind," Doyen explained. "I'm part of the same group as Tahoe. We've been watching for signs of the Admiral's consciousness for centuries. So I'm just a container for someone else's memories." Hei-yun felt sick. "No," Doyen said firmly. "You are you." But somehow the device containing Admiral Sun's consciousness found its way to Earth. It must have merged with you when you were very young. "Why me?" Hei-yun asked. "The device was programmed to find someone compatible," Doyen said. "Someone with the right mind to hold the Admiral's knowledge without being overwhelmed." Tahoe looked at Hei-yun with new respect. It chose well. Hei-yun sat on a box, trying to process everything. "What do those gray beings want with me?" "They are Varric extremists, like Instructor Juwu," Tahoe explained. "They worked with the Voidborn during the war. If the Voidborn returned to power, the Varric would gain special status." "But what do we do now?" Hei-yun asked. "I can't just hide in this closet forever." Doyen pulled out a small device. "We need to get you to a secure location where you can fully access Admiral Sun's memories. Right now, you're only getting fragments in dreams." "And then what?" Tahoe and Doyen exchanged looks. "Then you help us stop the Voidborn from rising again," Tahoe said. "The Admiral knew things about them that no one else did. Weaknesses, hideouts, backup plans." Hei-yun stared at them. "I'm just a student. I'm not a military leader." "Not yet," Doyen said gently. "But you have the potential to be." The door suddenly slid open. All three jumped, ready to fight. But it was Mina who slipped inside. "There you are. The whole academy is looking for you," she said to Hei-yun. "Instructor Juwu told everyone you attacked him and ran away." "That's a lie." Heian said. Of course it is, Minna agreed. But they believe him. There are security forces everywhere. Then we need to leave now, Tahoe said. Is there a way out of the academy? Minna nodded. Yes. I know a path through the maintenance tunnels. But where will you go? The old museum, Doyen said. The one with the battle artifacts. It has a secure room below it. I'll help you get there, Minna said. She looked at Heian with sad eyes. I always knew you were special from the first day. I just didn't know how special. Heian stood up, feeling stronger suddenly. Let's go. But I want to make one thing clear, she said, looking at Tahoe and Doyen. I'm not your weapon. I'll help stop the Voidborn because it's the right thing to do. But I decide how. Tahoe looked surprised, then smiled slightly, just like the Admiral would say. No, Haven corrected him. Just like I would say. The ancient museum stood quiet in the early morning light. Usually, it would be filled with students on field trips. But today it was empty. The four of them, Heian, Tahoe, Doyen, and Minna, moved quietly through the main hall. This place holds artifacts from the Voidborn War, Doyen explained, his voice low. Many items from Admiral Sun's flagship were saved and brought here. The museum was filled with old weapons, pieces of ships and uniforms behind glass cases. Heian felt strange looking at them. Some seemed familiar, as if she had touched them before. This way, Doyen said, leading them to a large room at the back. This is what we need. The room contained a full-size copy of a starship bridge. In the center was a command chair, and around it were stations for navigation, weapons, and communications. It was all behind a barrier with a sign that read, Bridge of the Freedom, Admiral Sun's command ship. Is this real? Heian asked, staring at the bridge. Most of it is a copy, Doyen said, but the command console is the real one from her ship. Tahoe looked around nervously. We need to hurry. Juwu will figure out where we went soon. Doyen nodded and pressed his hand against a hidden panel. The barrier slid open. Heian, you need to touch the command console. It might help unlock more memories. Heian stepped onto the bridge copy. It felt right somehow, like coming home. She moved to the command chair and looked at the console in front of it. Her fingers hovered over the controls. What will happen? She asked. I don't know exactly, Doyen admitted, but the console might recognize Admiral Sun's neural patterns in you. Heian took a deep breath and placed her hands on the console. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the console lit up with a soft blue glow. The light spread to her hands, up her arms, and then to her head. Heian gasped as images flooded her mind, not like dreams this time, but like doors opening. She saw battles and meetings, planets and stars, faces of people long dead. She saw herself, no, Admiral Sun, giving orders, making plans, fighting the Voidborn at every turn. She saw how the Admiral had discovered the Voidborn's weakness, their need to connect to a central consciousness. She saw the final battle plan, the sacrifice, the last moments as the Admiral placed her consciousness into the device. Find someone worthy, the Admiral had said. Someone who can finish this if needed. Heian fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the flood of memories. Tahoe and Minna rushed to help her, but she held up a hand to stop them. I'm okay, she said, but her voice sounded different, stronger, more certain. I remember now. I remember everything. She stood up, her back straight, her eyes clear. When she looked at the others, they took a step back. Something had changed in her face. Heian, Minna asked uncertainly. Yes, I'm still Heian, she said with a small smile. But I'm also Jisu's son. The memories have fully integrated. Tahoe stared at her. Admiral. Not exactly, Heian explained. I have her knowledge, her memories, but I'm still me. We're blended now. Doyen nodded, looking satisfied. This is what we hoped for. Not a replacement of your mind, but an addition to it. Suddenly, Alarms began to sound throughout the museum. Red lights flashed in the hallways. "They found us," Tahoe said, drawing a small weapon from his boot. Minna looked at the doors fearfully. "What do we do?" Everyone turned to Haeyun. Without hesitation, she moved to the command console and pressed a series of buttons. Hidden panels in the walls opened, revealing weapons and communication devices. The Admiral left backup plans everywhere, Haeyun explained, tossing a small device to Minna. "Take this. It will shield you from their scanners." She handed weapons to Tahoe and Doyen, moving with the confidence of a seasoned officer. Then she picked up a final weapon for herself, checking it with practiced hands. "The museum has defense systems that were never removed," she said. "I can activate them, but I need time." Tahoe looked at her with new respect. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Haeyun smiled slightly. "First, don't call me Admiral. Call me Haeyun. Second, we're going to defend this position until help arrives." "What help?" Doyen asked. Haeyun tapped the console, sending out a signal. The Admiral had friends everywhere. Some of them are still around. She looked toward the door as footsteps approached. "Now, let's show these void-born puppets what happens when they mess with a human." The museum doors burst open. 6 Varric soldiers rushed in, led by Instructor Juwu. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. "Find the human girl," Juwu ordered. "Take her alive." Haeyun and her friends hid behind the command console. She closed her eyes for a moment, accessing Admiral Sun's memories of the museum's layout. "There's a hidden passage under that display case," she whispered, pointing to a large case holding old spacesuits. "It leads to the security room. Minna, can you get there without being seen?" Minna nodded, her scales changing color slightly to blend with the shadows. "Take this." Haeyun handed her a small device. "Plug it into the main computer. It will activate the museum's defense systems." Minna slipped away, moving silently between displays. "Tahoe, we need a distraction," Haeyun said. Tahoe grinned. "That's my specialty." He moved to the other side of the bridge display and fired his weapon at the ceiling. The blast sent sparks flying. The Varric soldiers turned toward the noise. Haeyun and Doyen used the moment to move to a better position behind a row of old weapons. "Stop hiding, girl," Juwu called out. "We have the academy surrounded. There is no escape." "The academy?" Doyen whispered. "Why would they surround the whole academy?" Haeyun's face darkened. "Hostages. They want to force me to surrender." She tapped her communication device. "Minna, are you at the security room yet?" "Almost there," Minna's voice came back. "But I've seen something bad. There are more Varric ships landing at the academy. They're taking students prisoner." Haeyun felt cold anger rising inside her. Admiral Sun's memories showed her what the Voidborn did to prisoners. "Change of plans," she said. "We need to get back to the academy." "That's suicide," Tahoe argued. "Not with what I know now," Haeyun said. She checked her weapon. "The Admiral left backup plans everywhere. There's a weapons cache under the Academy's main hall, and I know all the secret passages." More Varric soldiers entered the museum. They were closing in. Suddenly, the lights went out. A moment later, blue emergency lights came on, and a mechanical voice announced, "Security protocols activated. Defense mode engage." Hidden panels in the walls opened, and small floating drones emerged. They fired stun beams at the Varric soldiers, who fell one by one. "Nice work, Minna," Haeyun said into her communicator. "It wasn't me," Minna replied, sounding confused. "The system activated before I reached the security room." Haeyun smiled. "The Admiral's old access codes still work. I activated it from here." A larger ship landed outside the museum. Through the windows, they could see it was different from the Varric ships, older, with faded markings that showed it had seen battle. "Who is that?" Tahoe asked, weapon raised. "Friends," Haeyun said. "The signal I sent reached them." The museum doors opened again. This time, A group of mixed species entered, humans, celestials, and others. They wore no uniforms, but moved with military precision. Their leader was an old human man with white hair and a scar across his face. "Admiral Sun," he said, looking at He-Yun. "Or should I say, He-Yun. The Freedom Guardians are at your service." "Captain Lee," He-Yun greeted him, drawing the name from Admiral Sun's memories. "You're older than I remember." The old man laughed. 300 years will do that. We've been waiting for your signal since the war ended. The Academy is under attack, He-Yun said. The Varric are working with Voidborn remnants. They're taking students hostage. Captain Lee nodded grimly. "We saw their ships. What are your orders?" He-Yun looked at Tahoe and Doyen, then back at the captain. "We fight, not just for me, but for everyone at the Academy." She stepped forward, feeling the weight of both her identities, the student who had been mocked and the admiral who had saved the galaxy. "I have a plan," she said. "The admiral left surprises for the Voidborn all over the Academy. They think they're the hunters, but they're walking into our trap." Captain Lee smiled, "Just like old times." "No," He-Yun corrected him. "This time will be different. This time, no one gets left behind." The main hall of Nexus Academy was filled with scared students. Varric soldiers guarded the doors while Instructor Juwu stood on the raised platform at the front. "Remain calm, and you will not be harmed," Juwu announced. "We only want one person. The human girl, He-Yun. Tell us where she is hiding, and this will end quickly." No one spoke. Even those who had mocked He-Yun stayed silent. Outside the Academy, He-Yun and her team approached quietly. They had left the museum in Captain Lee's ship and landed in a hidden spot behind the Academy. "The Varric have at least 30 soldiers inside," Tahoe reported after checking his scanner. "Most students are being held in the main hall." He-Yun nodded. "Then that's where we need to be." She turned to Captain Lee. "Can your team create a distraction at the front entrance?" "Consider it done," the old captain said with a smile. He-Yun looked at Mina. "I need you to get to the control room for the Academy systems. There's a hidden panel in Science Lab 4 that leads directly there." "What will I do once I'm there?" Mina asked. He-Yun handed her a small data chip. "This contains override codes. They'll give you control of everything: lights, doors, air systems." Doyen and Tahoe would go with He-Yun. They would use a secret passage that Admiral Sun had helped design when the Academy was built 300 years ago. "Remember," He-Yun told everyone, "our priority is the students' safety. No risks unless absolutely necessary." Captain Lee nodded with respect, just like the Admiral always said. The teams split up to begin their parts of the plan. He-Yun, Tahoe, and Doyen found the hidden entrance behind a statue in the Academy garden. It led to a narrow tunnel that smelled of dust and age. "The Admiral really did think of everything," Tahoe said as they crawled through the passage. "She knew the Voidborn might return someday," He-Yun said. "She left tools and secrets everywhere to help fight them." The passage ended at a small door that opened into a storage room just off the main hall. He-Yun pressed her ear to the wall and could hear Juwu speaking. "We know He-Yun is hiding somewhere in the Academy," he was saying. "For each hour she remains hidden, one student will face consequences." He-Yun's hand tightened on her weapon. "We need to move now," she whispered. She checked her communication device. "Mina, are you in position?" "Yes," Mina's voice came back. "I'm at the control panel." "Captain Lee." "Ready at the front entrance," the captain replied. "Just give the word." He-Yun took a deep breath. "Begin in 3, 2, 1, now." Outside, explosions rocked the front of the Academy as Captain Lee's team created their distraction. At the same moment, Mina activated the override codes. The lights in the main hall went out, and emergency barriers dropped between the Varric soldiers, separating them from each other. He-Yun, Tahoe and Doyen burst into the main hall from the storage room. In the confusion, they moved quickly to the center of the room. "Everyone down," Hei-yun shouted to the students. They dropped to the floor just as Tahoe fired a device into the air. It exploded with a flash of light that temporarily blinded the Varric, but didn't affect anyone looking away. The Varric soldiers stumbled, unable to see. Hei-yun and her team moved among them, disabling them one by one. Ju-woo realized what was happening and ran toward a side door. Hei-yun saw him and followed. "Tahoe, free the students," she called over her shoulder. "I'm going after Ju-woo." She chased him down a long hallway. Ju-woo turned and fired his weapon at her. Hei-yun ducked behind a column, drawing on Admiral Sun's combat memories to stay alive. "You can't win, girl," Ju-woo called out. "The Voidborn are returning. This is just the beginning." "That's where you're wrong," Hei-yun replied. "This is the end, just like it was 300 years ago." She stepped out from behind the column and fired. Her shot hit Ju-woo's weapon, knocking it from his hand. "Impossible," he gasped. "No human has aimed that good." Hei-yun stepped closer, her weapon steady. "You never understood. It wasn't just Admiral Sun's strategies that defeated the Voidborn. It was her humanity, her compassion, her creativity, her hope. Things your masters will never understand." Behind her, other students began to appear in the hallway. They had been freed by Tahoe and were watching the confrontation. Among them were many who had once mocked Hei-yun for being human. Now they watched in silence as the small human girl faced down the enemy that had terrified them all. 1 week after the attack, Nexus Academy was almost back to normal. The Varric forces had been defeated and taken away by Galactic security. Instructor Ju-woo and his allies were being questioned about their connections to the Voidborn remnants. The morning sun shone through the tall windows of the main hall as all students gathered for a special assembly. Hei-yun sat in the front row between Mina and Tahoe. Professor Doyen stood on the stage with the Academy's head administrator and several officials from the Galactic Council. "We are here today to honor the bravery shown during the recent attack," the head administrator announced. "Many lives were saved thanks to quick thinking and courage." Hei-yun looked down at her hands. They seemed like regular hands now, not the hands of a legendary admiral. After the fighting ended, she had worried that Admiral Sun's consciousness might take over completely. But that hadn't happened. Instead, the two parts of her mind had settled into a balance. The administrator called several names for special recognition. Captain Lee and his Freedom Guardians had already left, returning to their secret base to watch for more Voidborn activity. But Mina was called forward for her role in taking control of the Academy systems, and Tahoe for helping free the students. Then the administrator called Hei-yun's name. She walked to the stage as the room fell silent. "Hei-yun Kim," the administrator said formally, "the Galactic Council has confirmed what we suspected. You carry the consciousness and memories of Admiral Jisu's son, the hero of the Voidborn War." Whispers filled the room. Hei-yun stood straight, feeling hundreds of eyes on her. "The Galactic Defense Force has offered you immediate acceptance to their military academy," the administrator continued. "You would be the youngest cadet ever admitted." Hei-yun saw the expectation in everyone's faces. Of course, Admiral Sun would want to join the military again. It made perfect sense. But Hei-yun wasn't just Admiral Sun. "Thank you for the offer," she said clearly. "But I want to finish my education here first." Surprised murmurs spread through the crowd. The administrator looked confused. "Are you certain? This is a great honor." Hei-yun nodded. "Admiral Sun already had her time. Now it's mine. I'll use what I've learned from her, but I need to find my own path." After the ceremony, students surrounded Hei-yun. Many wanted to apologize for how they had treated her. Others just wanted to hear about the Admiral's memories. Tahoe pushed through the crowd to reach her. "You surprised everyone by staying," he said. "Even yourself?" Hei-yun asked with a small smile. "Especially myself," he admitted. "But I'm glad. The Academy needs you." Later, Hei-yun walked alone through the academy gardens. She found a quiet bench and sat down, closing her eyes to sort through her thoughts. Admiral Sun's memories were there, but they no longer overwhelmed her. They were like a library she could visit when needed. "May I join you?" Professor Doyen asked, approaching slowly. Hei-yun nodded, and he sat beside her. "How are you adjusting?" he asked. "Better every day," she said. "I'm learning to balance both parts of myself." Doyen nodded thoughtfully. "Do you know why Admiral Sun chose to preserve her consciousness this way?" Hei-yun was quiet for a moment. She was tired, she finally said. 300 years ago, she knew the Voidborn were defeated but not destroyed. She could have kept fighting her whole life, hunting down every last one. Instead, she chose to trust the future. "To trust you," Doyen said. Hei-yun shook her head. "Not specifically me." She didn't know who would receive her memories. She just wanted her knowledge to survive if it was ever needed again. The next day, Hei-yun entered her tactical systems class and took her usual seat. But this time, no one moved away from her. No one whispered or pointed. Tahoe sat next to her, and Minna took the seat on her other side. Other students nodded respectfully as they passed. "It's strange," Minna said quietly. "A few weeks ago, they all thought humans were primitive. Now they can't stop talking about Admiral Sun and the human fleet that saved the galaxy." "People fear what they don't understand," Hei-yun said, "and respect what they can't ignore." As the teacher began the lesson, Hei-yun opened her datapad and began taking notes. She was still a student, still learning. But now she walked with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was, not just a carrier of someone else's legacy, but the creator of her own. And as she looked around at the alien faces that now showed respect instead of mockery, Hei-yun smiled. The Admiral would have approved.